Hey guys, it's Roderick. I'm here for another review of The White Lotus, Season 2, Episode 6, Abductions. I know y'all be like, why can't you ever get these videos out like on time? But the truth is, I like to kind of mull the episode over, watch it maybe one more time, instead of just like watching it and just like hopping on the internet and just like running on. And plus, I like to give you a different perspective, like I said, from a craftsman, filmmaker, screenwriter point of view, so that I can kind of, give you a little extra bang for your buck, right? So the good thing about kind of waiting that extra day is that I get a chance to really think about the episode, and I really have put my finger on what has irked me about this season of The White Lotus, right? And what irks me about White Lotus is that it is a high concept serial drama, murder mystery that really has relied on its picturesque locations and ostentatious budget to really carry a season full of characters that we really don't care about, right? Now, in and of itself, that would be acceptable because not every series, not every drama is going to be a home run, and different people have different subjective tastes. But what irks me about White Lotus and really kind of HBO/Discovery as a whole is that they would never allow such an ostentatious, mediocre production to ever be done by a Black content creator, right? If you look at, for example, Black Woman Sketch Show, Insecure, and quite frankly, I think that Insecure was a better show than White Lotus is, right? But you could totally tell, just knowing the workings of Hollywood and the studio system, that like they give Black shows pretty much, okay, your budget's 30, here's 20, make it work, and it better look like it's an HBO show, right? Like never would a Black creator be able to really just rest on his laurels, rest on a past season's kind of accolades, and kind of give us a meh type of season, right? Like that would never happen, right? Or it would happen once and then would never happen again, right? So I really figure out like that is what has irked me about White Lotus, is that it really has just rested on its previous season success and that has not really given us any characters that we really care about, right? Because really at the end of the day, the only character that we end up caring about is Tanya, right? And we he can't stand her because she put her girl Belinda through it last season, right? But that being said, I understand the concept of, why it's so acclaimed, why people like it, but I really think that, is this really high concept? Is it just why people doing bullshitty things, right? Because I think that if you're again comparing the two shows, right, Insecure and White Lotus, I like both shows. Like the first season of White Lotus was fantastic. I liked pretty much all the seasons of Insecure. Insecure had relatable characters. It was great. It wasn't just a representation kind of buzz, but these are really great characters. And I don't think the characters, if you were to even compare the characters, for example, in Insecure, as opposed to comparing the characters in White Lotus this season, they would just fail in comparison, right? First season was fantastic, right? First season, you gave us really great, really interesting characters that you didn't have to go into a lot of, backstory, kind of explaining about who they were. Connie Britton's character was very explainable. A super high-powered, acclaimed executive who's great in the business world, but her family life is falling apart. Everyone can understand and relate to that and can get along with the ride, right? But this season, they really haven't given us any characters we really care about because, again, this is a murder mystery wrapped up in the drama. So let's do our body count, right? The only 3 people who we know at this point in the episode who are going to be alive by the time the next episode ends is Valentina, Rocco, and Daphne, right? And so there's just been a lot of red herrings and a lot of things going on that we really are like, okay, do we really care if any of those other people died, right? And the only person that we can really say that we really care about is going to be Tanya, right? Because we've been through Tanya and her bullshit, right? And Tanya is probably the most interesting character on the show. But that's my 45 cents. I would love to hear your opinions and thoughts on it. But like I said, I kind of realized, I don't like to hate watch things. I don't like to hate review things. I know that a lot of time and work and energy goes into producing these shows. This is, again, whatever. But I am going to call bullshit when I see bullshit. And I don't think that HBO Discovery would have given any other Black content creator such a long leash to be so ostentatiously wasteful to rely on scene locations and transitions to make up for a mediocre season. I'm just going to say that what that is. Okay, now, let's just jump into it. So we have Dom, so we'll do Dom, Albie, and Nono, right? Because they're pretty, like, we can just package their shit up together, right? Albie still hunting Lucia. Good for him. Albie needs to win or whatever. But again, we really don't know anything about Albie, but for the fact that he, you know, calls his dad out on his cheating. What are his hopes and dreams? Why did he go to Stanford? What did he major in Stanford? What does he want to do? Or is he just white and rich? Right? No, there's no problem with that, but just give us more, right? Because at this point, it could be Albie who could be dead, right? But whatever. So they're all having breakfast, and Albie's like, oh, we got a translator. We're like, okay, we know who that translator is going to be. So they all get ready to go outside, to go to Tesla de Aqua, right? To go have the big family reunion that's been like what the whole reason they came to Sicily for. Here comes Lucia. Dama's like, oh, fuck, here we go. And Nono's like, play it cool, play it cool. You blowing up your spot every time she shows up, and you're going to let Albie know that you've already had that, you know, they've already had sex. Like, if you acted a lot cooler, then Albie wouldn't play on, and then she wouldn't stick around, right? So anyway, but before they can leave, Lucia got to set up her next date, okay? Because she's a Professor McGonagall of horror arts, okay? And she got to set up her next date with the bellhop or whatever like that. And so then they get ready to go to Tesla de Aqua. They're all kissing in the back. Dama's like, this bullshit. And Nono just thinks it's hilarious. Because on some level, it is hilarious that your son and your grandson have fucked the same whore. And, you know, in a matter of like, what? A day or so, and that Dom is like so bothered by this, right? And so Nono's like, so where are you from? I'm from Catania. I was like, oh, okay. What are your English is really good? You know, where'd you learn that from? What do you do? I'm a hospitality. Bitch, I almost died. You're right, hospitality, right? Okay. You know, good one for you, Lucia. So then she's like, she's a hospitality. So then they stop at this like rest stop space or whatever like that. And then they notice that Alessio is following them. So Lucia's like, oh, we got to get in the car. So they get in the car, and then Alessio's still following them. She's like, no, pull over. And then she gets out, and then he comes out the car, and then Albie's like ready to fight Alessio. Dom is like, you can just let the bitch leave, right? And then Nono's like, what happened? Did he go with her? And so Lucia ends up going with Alessio. And Nono's like, I can't believe you did that, right? He comes out and he's like, no. And low-key, Dom didn't really care what happened to Lucia, because he just wants her out the picture because Dom is a fuckboy. And he's the worst type of fuckboy / person because he's one of those people who talks about wanting to change and that he is trying to change. And you don't have to try or do a hard work to change if you just do the right thing in the right circumstance, right? That's all change is. It's just changing your behavior. And the fact is that one way to show that you're not a scumbag, dirtbag, is not having the sex worker that you then paid $3,000 plus money to, that she's the one who's allowing you to charge up on your room, go away with a random man because you know your son's fucking him, but you let her go because you don't want to blow up your spot that you've been fucking this prostitute in Italy. You're a fuckboy, right? And that's just what that is. So fuck Dom, he's trash. Lucia goes, and they all leave. Now remember, Lucia's the translator, right? So they pull up to the house at Tesla de Aqua, right? And then they see the two little Italian women. None of them can speak Italian, right? So then they're like, oh, we're cousins. And Albie pulls up the Google Translate phone and was like, prima or whatever. I guess prima is like the Spanish, but whatever the Italian version of that. And then they're like, oh, they want to go in. None of them can speak Spanish. Here's a plot hole, right? If Lucia was the translator, then why didn't Albie pull out the phone and start speaking in Italian either via the phone or reading the translation to let them know why he was there, right? So in 2022, you can really navigate foreign countries without even speaking the language because Google Translate is free. It's a free app on your phone, right? I mean, I get the whole point of that, But either Lucia didn't need to be there, right? Because I think this whole Alessio situation is a whole ass stunt, right? To end up getting either a trip to Los Angeles with Albie or getting her $1,300, which we'll get to in a second, out of Albie, right? I don't think she's in any danger. Now, I could be wrong, okay? But I'm not buying it. So they show up to these random people's house who they don't know, who don't speak Italian, and get run the fuck out by the old lady who's like, I don't know you, I don't whatever. And we'll get to this point in a second, but this is why you don't show up being crazy at other people's homes, because they know where the knives are. But we'll talk about that in a later segment about showing your ass at other people's houses, okay? So anyway, so they get run out. They get home, whatever. Later that night for dinner, Nono is clearly broken up by the fact. Now, here's the thing. Now, here's the nuance. Nono is not upset that they could not find any relatives in Tesla de Aqua, right? That's not why he's upset. Nono is one of those men whose sense of validation has to come from women, which is why he's a serial adulterer, which is why she's trained his son to be a serial adulterer, which is why Albie may end up being one of those too. Because he talks about the homecoming and the embrace of a woman and the sense of knowing that he's done well. So his whole sense of validation and self comes externally from women, right? Which is why he's a serial adulterer, because most of the time, most men who are like that, their whole sense of self and sense of worth comes from their multiple interactions and intimacies with other women. Trash, fuckboy, you a fuckboy, your son's a fuckboy, didn't feel bad for no, whatever, okay? Now, let's get to Valentina. Oh, Valentina, so she's like at the day, keeping people in line, whatever. Should have moved Salvatore over to work with Isabella, but all he's doing is fucking hitting on Isabella, and she's like, this motherfucker, right? Like, clearly Rocco was a little bit more attractive. Like, say, like, Salvatore is not even in Isabella's, like, range. Like you are so trying to outkick your coverage right now, it's not even funny, right? So then she goes over and stops Salvatore from hitting on Isabella for her to hit on Isabella, be like, hey, it's my birthday. You gonna go out for birthday drinks? And Isabella's like, oh my God, cool, happy birthday. Of course, absolutely. And Valentina's like, yay, whatever, right? So now she's like, and Isabella hasn't given us any like lesbian vibes, at least I can see. But then again, I am like 3 blind mice with lesbians anyway. So like I said earlier, I wouldn't know a person's a lesbian unless I see them like doing an act. I'm just like that bad with like my gaydar just only is like on gay man or whatever. I mean, unless you're just ostentatious lesbian or whatever, I typically won't even know. So like the whole Valentina thing, never got lesbian vibes, but I'm sure there are lesbians who saw this or like, yep, lesbian. So anyway, so she goes, asks Valentina's out, whatever. Then later on in the episode, when they're getting ready to go, she's like, oh, I got one more thing to do. And then Isabella's like, well, since we're friends and we're about to do some friendly shit and I'm about to have this bullshit ass drink with you when I'm not on the clock, let me get my favor in, right? Say you move Rocco back from the beach club or whatever. And she's like, Rocco? The fuck we talking about Rocco for? Yeah. I'll think about it. Well, no, we promise we'll be really good. He's like my boyfriend. Valentina's like, boyfriend? Yeah, and we're engaged. Valentina was like, the whole fuck? Happy fucking birthday to me, bitch. She was like, okay, I'll think about it. And then she's like, I have a headache. We're not going to go out. Don't worry about it. She's like, really? It's your birthday? She's like, yeah, bitch. You done fucking fucked up my whole birthday mood with you and that fuck-ass fucking Rocco. That's okay, right? So then, sad Valentina goes over to the bar, has a martini by herself, whatever. Mia's playing in the background, and she's just having a sad little birthday. And we'll pick up with them later on. Now, let's get on to this Harper, Ethan, Cam fuck shit, right? Because, once again, Daphne comes off this episode as the MVP, right? Because she is not bothered by none of this shit. She knows her man for his works. She is on vacation. She's going to get her tan. She's going to get her massage. She's going to get her drinks in. She's going to get her Christmas shopping. It does not matter about all this bullshit going on. Why? Because at the end of the day, this motherfucker ain't going to leave me. I ain't leaving him. I got a trainer and I'm gonna be a-okay, right? So what we see is a very different switch because in when the season started, right? We saw Harper being very smug, very condescending because she really thought that her and Ethan had the better relationship. When the fact is that it looks like Cam and Daphne are winning here, right? Because they know each other for their ways and it works. And whatever concessions and compromises they've made as people within their relationship, it works for them, right? And the problem is that Harper and Ethan want to be at this standard of a relationship and their real relationship is somewhere down here and they can't navigate the distance, right? Which just happens in life. It's called cognitive dissonance as a person. So you have relational dissonance, right? The relationship you think you have versus the relationship you really have and how to navigate that space. And then what makes that space very difficult for Ethan and Harper to navigate is that Ethan has very low emotional intelligence and Harper has to be right. Right? So that always is a very combustible thing. If you're with someone who cannot get attuned to where you are emotionally or cannot read the emotional room of a situation, right? And you always have to be right? So therefore it makes it very difficult. And Ethan is very anti-confrontational, right? So Harper wakes up to Ethan sitting in his room, mulling over, hasn't gone for his jog because he's upset because he thinks that Harper does not believe him. That is one of the most ridiculous 20-something ass, 30-some shit bullshit that you can think. I ain't gonna waste no time, no worry, no space on what I think that you think, right? If I done told you what it was, you said you believe me, that situation is dead. I'm not trying to Lazarus that situation. I'm not trying to bring it back from the dead. If you said you're okay, I'm going to take you at your word. If you're not okay, then you need to let me know, right? But Ethan's going to mull and swirl and whatever. And Daphne and Harper brings up the fact that, well, I think the problem with the prostitute shows that there's something dead in our relationship. Bitch, you don't do just so dramatic. What it brings up is that your husband has trifling ass friends and you're too susceptible to being talked in your ear by a dizzy ass bitch, and this wouldn't have been a problem, right? If he said he didn't fuck the prostitute, he didn't fuck the prostitute. If you're mad because you're not getting enough sex from your husband, that is a you and your husband thing. And then I'll give you a free life tip, okay? Free life tip. If you want a relationship to change, right? Since you can't change another person, change how you act in the relationship. There we go. That's White Lotus, right? So there we go. So Harper, but Harper, it's more important for Harper to be right than it is for Harper to change. Because if your husband wants morning sex, wake the fuck up and fuck your husband, right? No, I understand, you're rich now, why would you want to do this? Nah, bitch, wipe your pussy, fuck your husband in the morning and move the fuck on with your life, right? If you still want to be in this marriage. Now, Ethan fumbled the bag again, okay? Once again, low emotional intelligence, when Harper says, do you want me? And he's like, of course I love you. That's not the answer to that question. The answer to that question is, of course I still want you. Of course I still find you desirable. Of course. Then he should have fucked her then, right? And then we could have moved on with our day and not have the rest of this bullshit. But because he's like low emotional intelligence and she just wants to be right and surly all the motherfucking time, this is why we have the situations that we have, right? So anyway, this whole like dynamic here is really interesting with the whole like Cam and Harper situation, right? Because most of the show is seen from kind of like the omniscient third party point of view for most of it, right? Instead of like some other scenes. But we only get to see Ethan's point of view as it calls to like the interactions between Harper and Cam, right? So we know that Cam was flirting with Harper under the table, right? He was giving her the fuck me eyes last episode with a cigar. They go to have shots. So we don't know how much of this is Cam's like imagination, or we don't know how much of this is really occurring, right? We know that Cam does have that mimetic desire complex where he wants to fuck every person that Ethan's likes. We also know that Cam's a trash ass person who fucks around on his wife. 2 strikes. Ethan, knowing him for his ways, is like, whatever. But this is, again, where you would have a conversation with your spouse being like, you know what? I think Cam's up to some bullshit. That whole changing in front of you, and now I saw him like giving you eyes. What's going on here, right? This is when you have that type of conversation, right? But since they only talk when the bullshit explodes, it's not happening. So Ethan like totally spirals out, goes up to the hotel room, the door is latched, sits on there, then has like the Sherlock Holmes, ghostly recreation of fingering in the hotel room, which was again a whole useless waste of a whole useless waste of brain space. You could have had a conversation and kind of like deaded this whole thing out. But come see, come saw, it's a drama, whatever, right? So we also get to see in the show, what we saw very early in the show was the heads again were showing up. Now, are they the red herrings, or are they really letting us know that the death, the curse, the decapitation, the betrayal is really coming forward? Because there are a lot of scenes, they all really like to show it after the Ethan, spin outs or whatever. So, maybe it's a red herring that maybe Ethan's gonna be the person who kills someone. We don't know. So we'll get to see that. So let's then go to Lucia and Mia, right? So Mia has gone from Ron Weasley to Hermione in the whore arts course, right? She'd have gone from the reluctant whore to the part-time whore to the I'm just gonna jump up in this shit anyway, right? But she's like failing because she's not getting no money for it. Because after she finished playing the piano, she goes up to Valentina and was like, hey, happy birthday, I'll give you a birthday thing, and tries to rub up on Valentina. But she's like, bitch, I work here, we can't. She's like, well, you know where the empty rooms are, blah, blah, blah. So she goes up the room with Valentina, comes out and sees this janky version of happy birthday, kisses Valentina, fingers her, gives her, first lesbian experience, because Valentina hasn't really been with another woman. Happy birthday to Valentina, right? I guess it's on the house. Now, what she is probably going to do is try to leverage some of that fingering and box munching into getting Giuseppe fired so she can play at the hotel piano. That would be a more equitable trade, right? Since she's like still in the hoe arts business, it's like, okay, now this will be an equitable trade. If you ain't going to get some money for it, at least get you a job for it or something like that to move your career. So I'm not mad at Mia, not mad at Valentina. Now let's get to Lucia. Now she shows up back to Albie's room, all sad, it's all dark. Not a nary a bruise on her, mind you, right? So if this guy was dangerous and he really wanted something from her, or her life was in danger, and he'd have followed her all the way from the fucking hotel to Tesla de Aqua, she would have some bruises on her if her life was really in danger, or if he was really as dangerous as it was, right? But I was like, okay, because she's just pulling a stunt. So she shows up sad. They go down to the beach on the rocks. She's like, you're really kind. It's not your problem. Parentheses, when someone says that, they really want it to be your problem. And there we go, right? Girl, you're stunting. I'm going to have to see some evidence more, but I still believe she's stunting. Let's get to Tanya and Portia, because this is really the key, right? Because the only character now that we really care about is Tanya. And Tanya, girl, is in danger, right? Because now we get to see possibly what this whole plan is, which I'm kind of disappointed because last season we weren't able to see kind of like who was possibly going to die or whatever. But it seems to me to Tanya that Greg was the cowboy that Quentin met all these years ago, and he's hired Quentin, okay, to kill Tanya so he can get the money. And then he'll give some portion to Quentin, and Greg gets the rest, right? Why would Greg do this? As we found out earlier in the season, they have a prenup, right? So prenups only cover in cases of divorce. Prenups do not cover death, right? So one of the tenets of all the states is that you cannot disinherit your spouse, right? If there's anything Anna Nicole Smith in her life has taught us, is always go for the forced share. FORCED share. You can Google that and I'll tell you what that is. But that's some low-key legal advice. Even if your husband leaves you nothing, you always can go for your forced share. And thank you, Anna Nicole Smith, and her Supreme Court case for that. Now, let's get into that. So, Tanya last episode done saw Jack and Quentin hunching. And so she wakes up and decides that she's going to drop some low-key advice on Portia, being like, maybe you should slow down. And honestly, I probably would have done the same thing, right? I would have come out and told all their business or whatever. Why? Because I'm not in my own motherfucking house. Do not show your ass at somebody else's house. They know where the knives are. They know where to bury your body. Do not do that. So Tanya had some kind of home training to recognize the fact that she ain't in her house. She don't know how to get back to her motherfucking house yet. So I'm just going to play the part or whatever. So she kind of like, well, maybe you should slow it down, whatever. Portia, like a typical 20-something who you can't tell anything to, was like, why? She's like, I don't think that's his uncle. What? Of course he is. Bitch, you ain't done a 23 and me. You don't know whether or not they're really fucking related. Like, you can't tell by the cum that's been in your mouth whether or not they're really related to each other. I was like, Portia, girl, at least just be receptive, right? Like, just don't dismiss it. Anyway, she's like, yeah, I don't know. And then Tanya drops some really good advice, which is what I've been saying all along, is that Tanya and Portia are just long trajectories of each other, right? That Tanya is where Portia will be, and Portia is who Tanya was, right? And Tanya recognizes this and gives her some really good advice, which of course, excuse me, Portia just totally totally dismisses and whatever. And I'm like, you know what, Portia, if you die, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't allow people to speak random shit into my life, but if someone is tempting to give me, advice, right, then I will at least be receptive to it and then dismiss it afterwards. It's kind of like spitting versus swallowing. Not to make it all about sex, but that's what you can do to uninformed, unsolicited advice. You can just pretend like you take your ticket in, and then after they leave, you can spit it out, and there we go. Nobody's feelings are hurt, right? Anyway, Jack shows up and takes them to Cephalou, right? So this is all about getting Portia off the board, right? Because the reason Greg was so upset that Portia was there was because she was going to ruin the romantic, escapade, was because Portia could be a potential witness to what happens and could really fuck up what his plans are for Tanya, right? This is my theory. So Quentin now gets Jack to take Portia off the board by telling them to go to Cephalou. So now they're on this little trip to Cephalou, and she's like, well, what are your goals or whatever? Because she's had this talking to with Tanya being like, get your shit together. You're the master of your own ship. Figure out what it is what you want to do in your life and fucking do it. Jack's like, what do you mean goals, whatever? And then he proceeds to get super duper drunk, angry, sad drunk, which is the worst combination of drunkenness, right? Angry drunk, fine. Sad drunk, fine. Sad, angry, excuse me, lingering cold. It's still from last week. Sad, angry drunk, just the fucking worst, right? So he just gets shit-faced. Why is this? Because A, he doesn't want to have to fucking drive her back. So this is a major plot hole, right? We'll get to in a second. So he gets super angry drunk, and then she's like, well, we're going to go to the party. He's like, no. And we're just seeing that Jack is just getting drunk and getting super unraveled, right? Meanwhile, Tanya is the guest of honor at this party Quentin is throwing for her. Tanya gets dressed up like a baby doll, right? And Quentin has hired this really big dick mafioso-related guy, Niccolo, to be her man for the night. But I'm like, well, Tanya, it seems like it's been more than 3 days since 2 days since Greg's been gone, right? And also, I don't think she needs a new man. I think she needs to get rid of her first man first, right? I don't know. Even though it sounded like Greg was already cheating, right? But how do we get to this leap where we're going to go from, I think my husband's cheating, I done went to the fortune teller, to I guess I'm going to cheat on my husband too? I just don't know how we got that leap already, but whatever. So Niccolo shows up, supposedly this big dick Italian. She shows up, they do coke in the back. Tanya's like, Tanya's like, oh, I don't know. Quinn's like, it's riding a bike. So she's doing coke the whole time, and they're having fun. And it's one of those old kind of party vibes or whatever. And they're really vibing and whatever. So then Tanya and Niccolo go back because they're about to hook up or hunch or whatever. And she's looking at the pictures, and she picks up the picture of Quentin and his cowboy. And I was like, yep, that's Greg. I'm telling you right now, Greg is a cowboy that's in the picture. And I think that Tanya, in her cokey mind, right, was like, ooh, he looks familiar. So I'm hoping that Tanya has put 2 and 2 and 4 and 4 together, that Maybe that is Greg, but the whole time Nicolo and Tanya are dancing or whatever, Quentin is like looking at her like really weird, like strangely, and like when Jack took Portia off, he was outside smoking a cigarette, like very Agatha Christie, villain-esque type of thing. And I was just like, damn, you just can't be friends and make friends with nobody, right? Like at first it was like some gays and they're having them Aperol spritz and they're telling stories. And now this motherfucker was trying to kill you? Like, it was just so disheartening. I was like, damn, you just can't make friends with nobody. So anyway, Jack gets so drunk, they have to spend the night at Cephalou, right? So he starts letting all the tea little drip, right? And he's like, oh, Quentin's so nice, and he pulled me out a hole. And Portia's like, well, because he's your uncle, right? Because you're related, right? She's asking all the wrong motherfucking questions, right? This guy's clearly drunk, and she needs to start getting some answers as to why the fuck they gotta spend the night, what the fuck the plan is, because he's like, oh, well, he's coming in some money soon, and he's really broke. All that, I'm like, oh, girl, Tanya. So now we see like 1 plus 1.25. Like Tanya, like Portia is like slowly but surely like adding this up. And I'm like, bitch, get you an Uber back to the house. Text Tanya, girl, what the fuck is going on? Like all these things. You don't gotta spend the night with him just because he drove you, right? Like seriously, like that is a major plot hole. Either they need to be like, Portia is drunk and ain't got no, Portia is a broke or whatever, but she could have gotten her way back to the fucking house, regardless if he wanted to stay the night or not. Like she did not have to stay the night with him just because he's drunk or drove her, right? I think we got enough clues to be like, you know what? Why don't you sleep this off? I'll meet you back at the house. I don't want to miss this party. I'll just give me a cab or an Uber or a Lyft, and I'll see you back or whatever. He passed out. Like as soon as he passed out, I would have left the hotel room, right? But whatever. I don't know. That's just kind of fun. And so it's this whole sad thing. But this is the penultimate episode of The White Lotus. Let me know what you think. I thought it was pretty good. We don't know who's going to die yet. We're going to be very interested to see who really is the person who ends up dying, or persons, because we know there's more than one body, right? So a lot of people are thinking that maybe the Madame Butterfly-esque is Madame Butterfly was the key as to kind of what's going on, that it's going to be a murder-suicide plot that went awry and more people are going to die. So I'm very interested to see at this point. I mean, 6 episodes in. Let's see how it goes. So anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video with your fellow friends who are White Lotus fans, and I will see you guys next week. Okay? Bye.